So we're going to be talking about Srila Prabhupada as a Founder Acharya, and we're going to be talking about your relationship with Srila Prabhupada. And still no sound? I mean, it should be sound now. Krishna Govinda. Now, can you hear me now? Now there's no wires or nothing, just going straight into the phone. If there's no sound now, it's an internet problem. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know. Anyway. Now there's sound. That's really weird. Unexplainable. Unknowable, unknown to me why this would happen. Anyway, so there was a period in Gaudiya Vaishnava history where, because there were so many interpretations of Krishna consciousness, and so many immoral activities in the name of Krishna consciousness, that educated and cultured people didn't take Vaishnavism seriously. They just thought it was like a cult for degraded people. Like it could have been a sex cult, it could have been a cult just for elderly people, a cult for immoral people. It was bad, to say the least. It was definitely bad. And so Bhakti Vinod Thakur had the job of bringing Krishna consciousness to the intellectuals, to the cultured people, and getting them to understand it and accept it. And he had done something. He had created the Namhata program. And the Namhata program was meant to take Krishna consciousness to the masses. So he was very successful at doing that. But he knew that he couldn't do as much as he needed to do alone. So he actually prayed to the Lord, please send someone to help me. And as we know, he sent Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he understood this was the person who would help him. Because Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he understood we need an organization, we need thousands of people to spread the message on my own. Even though I'm doing my best and writing so many books, establishing Namhata, we have to do something more. And I won't be here much longer, and I will need help. And so Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur took up the mission. What Bhakti Vinod Thakur did was establish. What Bhakti Vinod Thakur did is he established the validity of Krishna consciousness. And so Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he just continued with all the Siddhantic conclusions that were presented by Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He expanded upon them. So here now we have in the modern times a preacher who reestablished the validity of Vaishnava theology in a world which had no faith in it, in a world which thought it was not a serious religion, in a world that thought it was corrupt, it was a scandalous religion meant for unscrupulous people. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur continues this same mood of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And in his mind, in Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's mind, he had the same desire that his father had, which was that this philosophy is too great to be contained only within India. It has to go further. So that was his desire, that it would go further. And so that's what he did. Oh, I know what happened. Something strange happened. We're going to get the sound back. Hold on. Tell me now, everyone, because this should be of better quality. Tell me now if this is okay. So weird. How is that possible? Krishna. Well, strange. Life is strange. Okay. So, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he opened 64 temples. And then, as we were saying, he wanted to establish Krishna consciousness in the West. So he tried, it didn't work. They were unable to do it. But this was his mission, and he encouraged his disciples to do it. He encouraged Prabhupada to do it. And of course, we know Prabhupada did it. Now, I want to talk about Iskcon and why Prabhupada started Iskcon and how this all happened. We had spoken about this a little bit before. And when Prabhupada started his preaching, when he left his family, he always had this thought that I need to speak in English and I need to speak in the English-speaking world. And although he wasn't ready to go, he still was thinking like that. And he tried to establish a society which was called the League of Devotees, which kind of is a forerunner, precursor of Iskcon. So he established a society, tried to preach in India, but he was always thinking that we need to go to the West. And he was writing his godbrothers in Gaudiya Math, and Gaudiya Math had divided. They had Gaudiya Mission, Gaudiya Math, and then the other little movements. Also, it started, and he was trying to get the main godbrothers of the main mission to support him in preaching in the West, which means they would fund him. He would have organizational backing. He would be part of a big organization, and he felt that was the way to do it, both practically and also spiritually. That's what Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would want. He would want that. But he couldn't get the backing. And even when he went to America and he was successful, and he was telling them, we're successful, he couldn't get their help. Nobody would come to help him. He couldn't get, money was hard to get. The government of India wouldn't allow money to come. But so even if they could get money, they couldn't send it. But physically, nobody came to help. There's very little support, right? So a question may come up. If Srila Bhakti Siddhanta wanted preaching to be done in a unified way, why would Prabhupada establish his own organization? Because that would make it another mission. So the Gaudiya Math already divided into 2 or more missions, but 2 main missions. And it was over who should be the next Acharya. And Srila Bhakti Siddhanta never said anyone should be the next Acharya. He said we should have a GBC, form the GBC, and manage collectively as one unified organization. But they argued over who should be the Acharya, and they actually split. The organization split, and they argued to gain the properties. And they went to court to gain the properties. So different devotees got different temples. Can you imagine? Okay, let's put this in the proper context. Imagine today you have thousands of devotees, powerful devotees in Iskcon, arguing that so-and-so Maharaj should be the Acharya of Iskcon. And they're legally manipulating things to get those temples in their name and state that they are the real Iskcon. And everyone else is bogus. Excuse me. So we could imagine maybe that could happen, but we couldn't imagine the response would be from the other side of Iskcon, no, this devotee, he should be the Acharya. We could imagine, no, he's not the Acharya, follow Iskcon. But we couldn't imagine, no, he's not the Acharya. And there's a fight between the two, and they're both trying to acquire Iskcon properties. And they form a new organization. They acquire Iskcon properties. And then the other side acquires other Iskcon properties, doesn't form a new organization, says, we are the real Gaudiya Math. And then you could imagine that there's thousands of devotees who are totally disgusted with this, who just say, forget it, I want nothing to do with this, and they go off and they'll start their own little preaching center, little temples. Could you imagine Iskcon like that? Wouldn't that be strange? And how disturbed would we be? So that's what happened. So Prabhupada's leaving that. He had a desire to unite it. He talked about that in his Vyas Puja offering. I forget what year it was. Maybe in the 50s. We should come together, or it was a poem. It was an offering. We should come together, preach together. That's what Bhakti Siddhanta wanted. So still, when Prabhupada went to the West, he wanted to do it with his godbrothers, stay unified, because he knew that was Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's desire. As we said, he didn't get the help, and he needed to establish his society legally in America. So he had to establish a society. So he was part of Gaudiya Math, but Gaudiya Math wanted nothing to do with his preaching, and so he couldn't represent the Gaudiya Math, so he had to create his own society. Now, some people use this example and say, well, see, Prabhupada created his own society, so, why don't you, why don't I, why don't we create our own society? But, no, Prabhupada did it as a last resort because he couldn't get any help. It wasn't that. That was his idea. His idea was never to create an independent society. But there was no alternative. So I would say, I think we could safely say that there was some reluctance there to do it. But he did it reluctantly. So that's the idea. Now, Prabhupada creates his society and he establishes himself as what is called Founder Acharya. And Founder Acharya, of course, founder is an English word and Acharya is a Sanskrit word. So it's an interesting word because normally we don't see English and Sanskrit together, Founder Acharya. But it has significance. But before I explain it, I don't know if you're aware of this story, but in 1970, they printed some books and all it said was Acharya. It didn't say Founder Acharya. And Prabhupada was very upset. And he said, on the cover of every book, on the title page, it should say Founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. On my stationery, on your stationery, on your cards, temple signs, you'll see temple signs. Iskcon, International Society for Krishna, Founder Acharya, see Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Prabhupada made it very, very clear that everywhere his name is used, it should say Founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Not not in every sentence in every book. We don't say Srila Prabhupada, the Founder Acharya of the International, every time we refer to him. But on books, on cards, on signage, legal documents, and so forth. He made this point very strongly. He was very upset. And he felt that his position was actually being minimized by not being referred to as Founder Acharya. If he's the Acharya, that means someone else could be the Acharya later. If he's the Founder Acharya, there's only one Founder Acharya. And the idea of the Gaudiya Math and that system and that time, actually throughout history, was that the Guru would appoint a successor. So they had some Math or ashram, he'd appoint a successor. Prabhupada pointed out that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta did not appoint a successor because now we have this huge organization and it's not meant to be run by one person. It's meant to be run by a group. And as Prabhupada told us, as his disciples, he said, you all become guru. So Prabhupada was never thinking there's going to be one successor. Prabhupada never told anyone, never appointed anyone to be successor. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta never appointed anyone. And even though Srila Bhakti Siddhanta didn't appoint anyone, his disciples thought we should appoint someone. They thought, you have to have an Acharya. But Prabhupada's point was that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is the Acharya. He's the Founder Acharya. We can run conjointly through GBC and there could be many gurus initiating. If there is someone who is self-effulgent, that would be manifest. But it wasn't a necessity. He didn't say we have to have one. Let me find the self-effulgent Acharya. I will acknowledge him, and then he will be the Acharya of the movement. No. So that the Founder Acharya keeps fidelity of the teachings for all members of the society and for all times into the future. So the concept of a Founder Acharya is that he remains the guru for all successive generations, or he remains the leader. Everyone becomes a grand disciple or great grand disciple or great grand disciple or great grand disciple. And that Prabhupada's teachings are the lens through which we read, we understand the teachings of the other acharyas. Like sometimes you may read something that another acharya has said that seems to maybe somewhat contradict Srila Prabhupada. Wow, that's weird. I've just gone blurry. Is there a reason for that? Yeah, so it's because it's a phone and not a camera and it's adjusting, I don't know. So the idea of a founder acharya is that all successive generations will follow the teachings. There won't be a new acharya with a new idea and a new revelation. There's the founder acharya. That means the whole movement is established on the basis of his teachings. All successive gurus will be representing his teachings. So I represent when you become guru, you represent when your disciple becomes guru. He represents. It's kind of like what we say, the north, true north. True north is the guide, the guiding point. Where is north? True north, then we know all the other directions. So Prabhupada's the true north for all successive generations. That's what it means to be founder acharya. You're asking, Hare Krishna movement means the Ritvik movement that have initiated. Yeah, they are. The Ritviks. Well, since you brought it up, we'll bring this into the discussion. So, throughout Prabhupada's life, he talked about become guru. And I was just reading last night something very interesting, where Prabhupada said, don't say I can't become guru. Mahaprabhu wants you to become guru. It's not very difficult. Whatever you've heard, you repeat, you become guru. So he specifically said, don't say you can't become guru. I said, all my disciples should become guru. So, Prabhupada repeatedly said this. I mean, there's so many times he specifically told us we should become guru, and then as a general point in his books of philosophy, the story of Mahaprabhu meeting the devotee named Korma, and Korma says, what should I do? And he said, just stay here and become guru. Whoever you meet, tell them about Krishna and become guru. So that's our job, to teach Krishna consciousness. So that's what Prabhupada taught. Now, sometime after Prabhupada left, you all know the history, some of those who took the position of guru didn't do well. So some devotees were thinking that Prabhupada must have not have meant for us to be guru because we're not qualified. And what Prabhupada must have meant is that he would remain guru and we would only initiate on behalf of him. And so whoever we initiate would be Prabhupada's disciples and we aren't the guru. That was kind of a logical, you could say illogical conclusion based on the reality that so many of the gurus were failing. Either they were failing philosophically or they were failing practically. And so these people thought that this is the real cause of this could destroy Iskcon and we have to stop this. And by pulling out certain quotes out of context and stretching them beyond what they meant, they were trying to establish that Prabhupada actually wanted this for antiquity, that the disciplic succession would not have any of Prabhupada's disciples or followers as guru. Some said maybe there would be followers if they were qualified, but at present there are none qualified. So Prabhupada authorized us to initiate on his behalf, not on our behalf. So therefore they get initiated and they get spiritual names. And they tell these people that you're initiated by Prabhupada. So Prabhupada from the very beginning, he was saying, be guru, be guru, be guru, be guru. course, we didn't understand that. We didn't feel qualified. In 1968, he said, maybe by 1975 you can take disciples. And then later, Prabhupada said it's not really proper when the Guru's present, but after he leaves, then you can take disciples. So that's what Prabhupada told us. So that's what we did. And now the challenge is, Prabhupada is the founder Acharya. He is the head of the institution. How to keep everything focused on Prabhupada, even though you have many gurus. Now, that's easy. Just don't have any gurus and initiate everyone as Prabhupada's disciple. And, we can have many Siksha gurus. I could initiate you, you become Prabhupada's disciple. If you want to take Siksha from me, that's fine, but you don't need to because you have Prabhupada. You're his disciple, so you don't really need me. And that would, and anyway, I can give you Siksha, but I would just be your god brother or god sister, depending on the case. And that would solve the whole problem. And it was a very pragmatic approach to problems in Iskcon. It's true, if we were all disciples of Prabhupada, it would be more unified, right? So now we have this challenge that we have many gurus and one founder Acharya, and we're all individuals as disciples of different gurus, but we need to be unified. Now, something very interesting happened along the way. That seeing the failings of Iskcon, some devotees left Iskcon and they took guidance from gurus outside of Iskcon, either Prabhupada's godbrothers or disciples of Prabhupada's godbrothers who are much senior to us, maybe by 30 years or so, something like that, 30, 40 years senior to us. And we've heard that some of them were saying, at least one group was saying that our spiritual master, he can help Iskcon because Iskcon doesn't really have all the solutions, or they don't really understand the philosophy as well as he does, so you should just let him guide Iskcon. So that was pretty much the opposite of Ritvik. So Ritvik wanted to get rid of all the gurus to keep Prabhupada predominant. And this other group wanted to kind of predominate their guru and kind of get rid of everyone else. And not necessarily get rid of Prabhupada, but they felt that the other gurus they just weren't doing a good job, or this guru could help them do a better job. And so he should have a prominent position above and beyond all the other gurus. He should even be instructing the GBC because they were younger than him. So you had these interesting responses to what had happened in the 1980s when many of the gurus who we considered to be the pillars of Iskcon fell. And nobody could imagine that these devotees would have difficulty. And that's why it was such a shock. And so people began thinking, well, there must be something wrong with the system, because these are people who you couldn't imagine in 100 years would ever have a problem as devotees. And now they're having problems. So it must mean that they couldn't handle all that karma. It must mean that Prabhupada never wanted to have them as gurus. So you have these two sides. Ritvik is all Prabhupada, and the other, Gaudiya Math, was like, no, bring our guru in, and he can guide all of you. So it was like, again, this, you're feeling the scent of this Acharya, one Acharya. So Prabhupada's mood was that none of us are qualified, and that the best way, none of us are qualified to be an Acharya of a whole organization. And the best way to manage an organization is to do it in groups. And there's even, I don't have the exact reference, but there is a reference in Shastra where it said, in Kali Yuga, decisions should be made in groups. Prabhupada had said that. Yeah. So, Krishna Karshani is saying that some disciples of the gurus who left became Ritviks because they were hurt and they felt that security in Prabhupada. Are you saying they got initiated again? Because if they're already initiated, they don't need to be initiated, or they felt that their initiation was bogus and they got reinitiated. But certainly, we can take shelter of Prabhupada, but we can't take diksha from him. So, what the Rifics are saying is fine. Prabhupada's the center, take shelter, he's the main guru of Iskcon and so on. But they're proposing that you can take diksha. And so that's, there's so many things that they say which are true. But you can't take diksha. That's not true. That's not substantiated by Prabhupada's instructions or the instructions of the Acharyas or in any scripture. So there's no way to substantiate that claim. You substantiate it by looking at it in a more pragmatic way. That's what we're saying. No one in Iskcon is qualified. We'll keep Iskcon unified. The real guru of Iskcon is Prabhupada, so why have anyone get in the way? Why not just directly connect? When they get in the way, they could create problems, they can misrepresent Prabhupada. So many things. So, yes, it is understandably a problem when the gurus fall. So that gave rise to this, no gurus are qualified, therefore you need Ritvik, or no gurus are qualified, therefore you need Gaudiya Matacharyas to help us. So, the vision of Prabhupada was to create an organization that could spread Krishna consciousness around the world and could maintain the teachings that he gave. So when Prabhupada was writing his books, Prabhupada was preaching I'm reading your comments. I'm commenting on them as I'm reading them. Some of them I don't have to comment on. And yeah. So I'm actually trying to keep my train of thought, but I can't avoid seeing the comments because they come up. So Prabhupada's vision was, we create an organization. The organization is based on teachings. The teachings are in the books. Everyone in the organization represents those teachings. So Prabhupada was a little, cautious and concerned about his teachings being misunderstood, infiltration of other ideas within Iskcon and so forth. So, I had taken some notes. I just want to review this for a second. Yeah. So when Prabhupada established the GBC, he said, don't make the same mistake as the Gaudiya Math. So he was really focused on this concept that we need an organization that can maintain these teachings through successive generations. So that was the idea. There's going to be no Acharya, there'll be a governing body. Now, as far as the governing body, some people say, well, the governing body is not doing a good job, or it has failed in many ways. And whether that's true or not is not the issue. The issue is that Prabhupada wanted a governing body. So, of course, the governing body should do things correctly, and they're trying to do their best. But the point is that Prabhupada wanted a governing body. That was very important for him. So, to disband the governing body because they're not doing well is not a solution. The solution is always do it right, do better. If we're not doing good enough, let's do better. But disbanding the governing body was the cause of the fall, the division of the Gaudiya Math. And so Prabhupada said, don't become another Gaudiya Math. Now, as I've said before, it's interesting to see how Prabhupada never got help. And I think in retrospect that it was better that way, that he as the only guru and there was unification in our society. Now, most of you or all of you weren't there during Prabhupada's time and weren't there to witness his leaving, but just try to understand what's going on. You have a society that's run by one guru. And even though you have a society run by the GBC, Prabhupada could veto anything the GBC did in a moment. And he could correct and chastise any leader at any time during the year. So even though you had the GBC, still they had to go through Prabhupada and get approval for their resolutions. And if Prabhupada saw something wrong anywhere he went, or if he was informed about something wrong going on somewhere in another part of the world, he would correct it. So Prabhupada was really always, when Prabhupada was here, everything was being tweaked and adjusted in real time, all the time. So we could never go off. It was always Prabhupada was always there. Oh, this is drifting off. Correct it. If you ever see something in Iskcon today and you think, that doesn't seem right, or I never heard that went on during Prabhupada's time. Well, probably you're right. And probably if Prabhupada were still here, it wouldn't be going on, because if it's the wrong thing, he would stop it. So Prabhupada was running Iskcon. Prabhupada leaves, and the GBC has to continue now without Prabhupada's veto power and his oversight throughout the year of correcting things. And also Prabhupada was his society, so he could say, I want you to give money here, I want you to give men here. That was much harder after Prabhupada left for us to do that, because we were divided into our own projects and zones. So you now imagine this problem that there's one guru powerful running the whole movement, he leaves, and now you have multiple gurus. And how do you make that adjustment? So it was like a huge problem for Iskcon, and inexperience was at the heart of the problem, and also that we were young. So now let's look at the significance of Prabhupada's books. That establishes, here's the Siddhanta, here's the teachings, here it is. This is how we're going to understand all the teachings of the previous Acharyas. Whatever you read outside of Prabhupada's books, you have to understand it in the context of what Prabhupada is teaching. You can't understand it independently, because sometimes Acharyas may disagree. And so if there is some disagreement, of course, it's transcendental, but if we have to express the Siddhanta, we have to express it as we got it through Srila Prabhupada. And so he writes his books, and here's the Siddhanta. This is going to be the guiding line for every guru, what everybody's teaching. This is it. This is what we're being chased to. Now, we have a problem, because out in the marketplace, there are so many books. Some are written by Prabhupada's disciples, some are not, and it can be confusing. So being grounded in Prabhupada's books is extremely important, both for your spiritual life and for your preaching. And because in the future, you're all going to have to become gurus. Of course, you're saying, yeah, right, I'm not going to become a guru. And Prabhupada said, don't say no. Actually, Prabhupada, in a sense, he's saying you can't say no, you have to. If it's not Diksha, then it's Siksha. And so you have to know Prabhupada's books to properly represent him. So now, the next situation, which was the title of this lecture, was Deepening Your Relationship with Prabhupada. So we have a challenge, and in 10 or 20 years, maybe maximum, let's say, maximum 40 years, say, most of Prabhupada's disciples, say the majority, will probably not be here 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, but in 40 years, those who didn't take their vitamins will not be here. And probably even those who did take their vitamins won't be here, because most of them will be, 40 years, most of Prabhupada's disciples will be 100 plus. The youngest ones might be 97 or 100. Yeah. So there's a concern of what Iskcon will be like without Prabhupada's disciples. Because, as Srila Prabhu said, something really discouraged him, and it was the impetus to teach the Founder Acharya series. And it was when devotees would tell him, you're so fortunate that you were with Prabhupada, and you had Prabhupada's presence. And, you know, the implication was that we're unfortunate that we didn't have his presence. And he was really upset because he felt that you also have his presence. Why are you saying this? You have it as much as I have. So the challenge now for the future generations is, how can we help you imbibe Prabhupada's presence, feel his presence, feel his connection, feel the dedication to his movement as much as we, as his disciples, Diksha disciples, felt, so that when you continue the preaching, when you preach about Prabhupada, it'll be as if you are his disciples. You will feel that I am his disciple, I am his representative. It's meant to be that way. And so a lot of devotees, as Srila Prabhu pointed out, feel that it's just so different for you being Prabhupada's disciples and we weren't. And in a sense, that's true. But look at statistically what's going on. Prabhupada had 47 or 4,800 disciples. How many are active in Iskcon? 500, 800? How many are doing well? I don't know, I can't say. But I can think of many God brothers that have left. I've never seen them. I've been around the world. I've never seen them. They're not around. Or God brothers that maybe they're not doing as well as they did when Prabhupada was here. And that means they're not doing as well as many devotees who came after Prabhupada's demise. So how can we say that we are so fortunate that we had Prabhupada's presence, his personal association, and you are not fortunate if those who had his personal association are not doing as well as those who have his Vani, his instructions. So, we have to, I think it's really important that we understand that Krishna consciousness doesn't exist only in three-dimensional space. That Prabhupada's ability to inspire and direct us, Prabhupada's ability to come to us and back us and give us the power, Prabhupada's ability to help us understand him and his mission and his mood, which is so important to understand for the preservation of Iskcon, that is not something that is granted only to his Diksha disciples. Because Diksha is not that important. What's important is Siksha. So if two people have the Siksha of the same person, then they have equal opportunity to connect with that person and advance. And just because one has Diksha from that person, one could argue, well, Prabhupada's a pure devotee, you have Diksha from him. Therefore, that Diksha is more powerful than the Diksha you get from his disciples. But if that is true, why is it that some of Prabhupada's disciples are not doing well, whereas some of Prabhupada's grand disciples are doing very well? Because they both have the Vani of Prabhupada. They both have the instructions, and your connection is through the Vani, through the instruction. And Prabhupada's Vani is what's most important in all of our lives. And so that's why I'm always saying to devotees who say, oh, I'm reading your book, I'm listening to your lectures. And I say, what about Prabhupada's books? What about Prabhupada's lectures? You have to understand that Prabhupada is a Founder Acharya. He's the North Star. He's the guiding post. So we all have to be connected to that. We all have to be clear in understanding what is not only Prabhupada's books and philosophy, but understanding his mission. What did Prabhupada come to do? And when you understand his mission, then you start to understand the importance of the GBC and keeping the movement together and cooperating and compromising. And then you understand the importance of working together in unity. Not that my guru is better than your guru, or why would you want to accept initiation from this guru because my guru is so much better. And we don't really want people who aren't disciples of my guru in this temple or this zone because we want to create solidarity with our gurus. you understand that's not Prabhupada's mission, and that's not his mood. That's not what he came to do. And so those things happen, and they're in some places, to be honest, they still exist to some degree or another. And we can say it's a lack of understanding Prabhupada's mood and his mission. He didn't want that. He's creating an international society in which our allegiance goes to him, and all our gurus are simply representing him, and that's it. And it's not a question, like Prabhupada says, it's not a question of my guru or your guru. We're all representing Prabhupada. Prabhupada's representing the disciplic succession. He's representing Krishna. Krishna is the guru. Guru is one. And I often said that Prabhupada has his own spicing on Krishna consciousness, and we as his disciples are meant to cook with that same spice. And that preserves the mood, the mission, the Siddhanta of Iskcon, because we have to preserve it in the future. And the people I'm speaking to right now, the people who I speak mostly to when I give class, when I travel, are the future. You're 30, 40, 50 years younger than I am. You are the future. Like Prabhupada left 40 years ago. Most of you are going to be around 40 years, 30, 20, 30, 40 years after your gurus are gone. You are the future. So it's incumbent upon you to understand as best you can from your spiritual master, from Prabhupada's disciples, from Prabhupada's books, his conversations, his morning walks, his lectures. What is his mood? What is his mission? What is that spice? What is Iskcon? What is a GBC? What is a temple president? What is a guru? What is a Siksha guru? What is a Diksha guru? All these things are incumbent upon us to understand, because Prabhupada explained them, and they constitute what Iskcon is. And if we don't understand that, then we're going to preach the wrong thing, or we're going to think in the wrong way. We're going to tell new people the wrong thing. We're going to create a spice upon Iskcon that was not Prabhupada's spice. So the point is that you can understand Prabhupada the way his disciples understand him. You can have a relationship with Prabhupada that's as deep or even more deep than his own disciples. Don't ever think that Prabhupada is just for his Diksha disciples, for his initiated disciples. Now, another point many devotees have made along this line is that Prabhupada never said, I'm the Diksha Guru of Iskcon. That's to refute the Ritviks, but also to make this point that Prabhupada, being someone's Diksha Guru, doesn't give those Diksha disciples a special position. Of course, we all feel honored and special to be initiated by Prabhupada and to have seen him, but the real initiation is actually the Siksha. In the Bhagavatam, after Narada Muni heard from the sadhus, his mother died, and then he left, and he met Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva, can you tell me your story? So he told him the story. I met these sadhus, I served them, I took their remnants, I became purified, and my mother died, and so I went on pilgrimage. So then Vyasadeva said, well, when you went on pilgrimage, what happened? What did you do? But he said something very significant. He said, after your initiation, what did you do? And after you met the sadhus, your mother died, it was actually, he didn't tell him that he had left yet. It was the story about how his mother died and he left was a response to what did you do after? I think it was, he told him his mother died and said, what did you do after that? But he didn't say, what did you do after that? He said, what did you do after you were initiated? It's kind of interesting because there's no description in the Bhagavatam that says there was any formal initiation. And the word he used to ask, what did you do after your initiation, was not Diksha. So hearing from the spiritual master is a kind of initiation. And one time Prabhupada said, if they read my books, that's their initiation, because that's the real thing is the instruction. So if you follow Prabhupada's instructions and his initiated disciples don't, who's the real disciple? You or them? Obviously it's you. So don't ever think you are not a disciple of Prabhupada. Don't ever think Prabhupada can't speak to you. Don't ever think you can't have this intimate connection like Prabhupada's initiated disciples. No, I would say that it's your duty to understand this. It's your duty to feel this. And I would say if you don't feel this way, Iskcon doesn't have a future. Because then we can't have things being channeled just, oh, I only know what my guru says and I really don't understand Prabhupada and I don't understand his spirit, his mission, his whole vision for Iskcon. We can't do that because then we'll have all these different sectarian ideas within Iskcon. Not that they're bad ideas, but they're limited to the vision of one particular person who's trying to achieve one particular thing. And we need to have this broader vision. So it's really important for all of you to understand your relationship with Prabhupada, and specifically to understand Prabhupada's mission and how you fit within it. And it's your duty to understand what Iskcon is, and to understand the position of your spiritual master within Iskcon, to understand the organizational structure of temple presidents, GBC, what their position is, and so how we all fit into it, because you're going to have to explain that to successive generations. And if you don't understand it, or you have a skewed idea of it, or you just have the wrong idea of it, then we're going to pass down all these wrong ideas. And we may pass down ideas which are not what Prabhupada told us. And so we need to be careful. It's just like, I may be preaching something, or I may be focused on a certain kind of preaching. It's an aspect of what Prabhupada preached. My godbrother may be focused on another aspect, very focused on book distribution. Another godbrother's very focused on Varnashram. Another godbrother is very focused on academic preaching, or another godbrother is very focused on adapting Iskcon to the modern age. And so we're getting all these different things from our different gurus. But we have to have a vision which also includes the broader vision of what Iskcon is, and all these other visions together making up the whole of what Prabhupada wanted. Otherwise, we could get hundreds of Hare Krishna movements in the future, all based around one particular guru's ideology. This is what this guru taught, and he's got this huge following, and this huge following is now at odds with the rest of Iskcon because they believe Iskcon is in the dark ages about this Siddhanta or about this preaching strategy, and they could easily just separate, and we could have so many sects within Iskcon. So Prabhupada's creation of GBC was to prevent that from happening. So GBC is a very important managing body. It is the managing body of Iskcon. And gurus, temple presidents, we all work together. We're all godbrothers. We all have the same goal. If I were GBC, I'd wear a different hat. If a GBC were not a GBC, he'd wear a different hat. If I'm guru, I wear some hat. If I'm temple president, I wear another hat. But we're all trying to understand what Prabhupada's heart is, what his mission is, and that's very, very important. And I will guarantee you that as you try to do this, you will feel your connection with Prabhupada becoming stronger and stronger. When you try to understand what was Prabhupada's mood, what was he thinking, what was he trying to do in establishing Iskcon in the West, how did he do it? What were the positions that he gave to temple presidents? What was the position of the GBC? Why did he establish it? Why was Prabhupada always preaching, you all become guru? What is the position of guru? What is the position of Founder Acharya? How does it differ? What is the position of TP? What is his authority? What's the authority of guru? What's the authority of GBC? We have to understand all these things. As you understand them, you'll be understanding Prabhupada's vision. You'll be understanding Prabhupada's spirit. You will feel much closer to Prabhupada. And I think for this next generation, you all have told me, I don't think you all have told me, that the spirit of preaching that was present during Prabhupada's time seems to be something that we can't emulate now, but I think we can. And I think when you hear about that, then you should try to imbibe that and start to emulate it. That Prabhupada was a revolutionary. And I think part of the reason we're not emulating that mood is because we're not that connected with Prabhupada's revolutionary mood. We think, things are different and Prabhupada's not here, and, things are different, Prabhupada's not here. But the more connected you are to Prabhupada, the more you will imbibe that revolutionary spirit. Prabhupada, it's just like mow down the forest, of Maya. That was Prabhupada. Just get in there and, we're going to mow it down, somehow or other. So that's very, very important. It's very, very helpful because it will inspire you tremendously to spread Krishna consciousness. Because you'll feel that pulse of Prabhupada. He wanted it spread so much. He was pushing us. Double it. Open more temples, more books, more programs, more traveling sannyasis, more everything. It was pushing. When you connect with Prabhupada, you'll be in that mood. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to tell you something very unpalatable, but most religious movements don't last beyond the 4th generation. And we've already seen the tendency for Iskcon to splinter. You have many of our godbrothers who have gone outside of Iskcon to start their own movements or become part of existing Gaudiya Math movements. You have the Ritvik movement, and the Ritvik movement has its own divisions. The people who've gone outside of Iskcon have created further divisions. They were together, godbrothers, and they separated in their own maths. So the tendency to have multiple maths is very strong. So don't think that tendency isn't, cannot overtake us in the future. It's very strong, and I'm sure you experienced sometimes working with an Iskcon, you feel frustrated and just say, I'd rather just do it on my own. Going through all this bureaucracy and having to deal with people who don't understand or make bad choices, and then it affects the people I'm preaching to. It's just like so much easier to do it alone. Okay, there's room for individual projects and individual initiative. But Prabhupada definitely felt that the power to spread Krishna consciousness is in the hands of Iskcon, and our unity is fundamental to making this happen. Now, Srila Prabhu told me something which was really interesting. He said that he went somewhere where they were having difficulty getting along, which is, not uncommon. And he said after the Founder Acharya series, they all got along much better because I think they started to see Prabhupada's vision and connect with that rather than their own limited vision. And I've been to different parts of the world, and I've seen in some parts of the world the vision is limited because they have limited experience and limited association. And maybe there's a tendency to misunderstand how things should be without more senior association. So the more you can, you don't think, well, it's not my responsibility to understand how Prabhupada wanted to run things. Not my responsibility to understand what the GBC is. And 20, 30 years, you may be on the GBC. Katie's going to be on the GBC 20 years from now. That's her goal. So you may be a temple president. You have to know these things. What did Prabhupada want of temple presidents? So on and so forth. So now we have a controversial question. I know it may sound controversial, but sometimes I'm wondering why Prabhupada wanted all his disciples to be united. Why did not let every of his disciples start their own movement? I think the answer is simple. Or Sangha. They will be more free preaching according to Srila Prabhupada's teaching. but spiced with their own mood. Maybe that preaching will be more successful. No, Prabhupada wanted what you said, united under Iskcon. Yeah, go do your own preaching, start your own temple, do your own project, but do it under the jurisdiction of the GBC so that it's united. You know, like one of the things that I see, I'll just a personal perspective, that sometimes I talk about my preaching strategy, and devotees will say, "Oh, I'd like to learn from you," or you have you have articles, you have a website I could use, or could you train me that way? So because I'm part of a big organization, that means if I come up with a good idea, that means everyone who likes the idea in the organization who hears about it can implement it. Whereas if I'm outside my own organization, then there's not that intercommunication, and then I'm in my own organization, and so it's only my people that are going to come there, and then other organizations are not going to come there, and then when I die, maybe I die with just a few hundred people, and none of them are really qualified to be guru, and maybe I don't even have good managers, or maybe they all fight, and then my organization dies out in 20, 30 years. And all these little organizations, they have no longevity. Whereas Iskcon has longevity. You can go now and take Bhakti Shastri from so many great devotees. So what if my own movement? Where do you go for Bhakti Shastri? What do you do? We're all, and see also, when you have your own organization, there's a tendency to fault the other organizations. We're all in Iskcon, we can't fault it. We have to make it better. So Prabhupada said, no matter what, don't leave. But yes, we need to have the independence to be inspired to preach in new ways and develop new projects. But it's done under the jurisdiction of proper leadership channels. So it's a balance. You have to do both. Give freedom and then work together. Yeah, you have your own flavor. Your movement. See, the thing is, I have my own flavor, you have your own flavor, he has his own, but we're all within the body of Iskcon. So the basic kitri still tastes the same. Even though, I cook kitri today, you cook it tomorrow, we all have our own flavor. But the basic kitri is Iskcon, and everybody in Iskcon gets it. So that's the idea. And all we know is Prabhupada's request was don't leave. But even if we don't understand anything more than that, that's enough. But we understand why he didn't want us to leave. Here's what, I'll read something. This is what Rabindra Swarup said. This is the impact of being united around Prabhupada and Iskcon. We have his standards, we have his principles, we have his spirit, we have a societal shape, the form that he set up, the institution. No, here. Maybe this will answer your question. These are the benefits of keeping Prabhupada in the center. Future generations get his mercy, enabling them to go back to Godhead. So it's like keep Iskcon together. That's where the flow of mercy, Mahaprabhu's flow of mercy will come, and that's where it can go out as broadly. So if you keep Iskcon together, it means more people will get Krishna consciousness in the long run. Because Prabhupada's teachings are allowed to go, and this is where they'll be maintained purely. Keeping Prabhupada in the center means there's one teaching which we all represent. It secures the unity of the movement, the integrity of the movement. Iskcon, within Iskcon, the teachings will remain consistent over time. this potency to preach that Prabhupada gave us, it'll be preserved. The books will remain central. Prabhupada's eyes will be the lens through which we see the other acharyas. Okay, so we start these little movements, and all of a sudden, the person, the acharya of that movement, his books become prominent. And then those are the books that get distributed, not Prabhupada's books. So Iskcon has, of course you can distribute your spiritual master's books, but Prabhupada's books are, they're the central point. So that's the value of Iskcon. If we don't have that, other things they'll change. And then we also have the checks and balances. So let's say I'm in Iskcon, but I have my own project, but if I'm going overboard or off or something, my godbrothers will say, look, this isn't right. You shouldn't do it that way. Yes? Gurnisha says, maybe we should have 2 rules. First fundamental rule is do what Prabhupada wanted. Second, when in doubt, refer to the first rule. Okay, so can I go now? I did 1 hour and 7 minutes, and we're going out to Rath Yatra today. So we'll continue this topic tomorrow. My hope is that I see there's a bit of a hurdle with the next generation of feeling, for some, I don't think for all, for some, feeling that closeness to Prabhupada, or thinking that we as next generation are somewhat handicapped or debilitated because we didn't have Prabhupada's presence. And then I think that's true in a sense. Being with Prabhupada gives us some insight into that spicing. But in terms of the philosophy and imbibing that in your connection with Prabhupada, it's open to you. And do your best to learn from Prabhupada's disciples what his mission was, what his mood was, what that spicing was, and then 20, 30, 40 years from now, you can hand that down. It'll be your duty to hand that down to the next generation. And of course, you can't hand it down if you don't have it, if you don't understand it. And then if you don't understand it well, you'll start making it up. You'll start saying, well, I think it's this and that. And you don't want to think what it is. We just want to pass down what Prabhupada gave us. Is that okay? Thank you very much. And we will see you tomorrow, same time. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.